Good morning, Bande Matram. Welcome all of you. This morning we are going to have the second part of discussion. Second phase. It will be on karma from thoughts and aphorisms. As we know, this portion, this book. Sri Aurobindo's thoughts and aphorisms. It is now in three parts. Initial was Jnana that we have already covered, and the second part we are going for karma. The topic of discussion will be on God leads man while man is misleading himself. That is the topic of discussion for this great morning. God leads man while man is misleading himself. Normally, we know some proverbs like to err is human, to forgive is divine. Man is packed with narrowness, ego, and of course ignorance. So definitely we'll expect some imperfections from the so-called human beings. Naturally, we are here to take up these things. It is the characteristic of man to mislead himself. So when man is misleading himself, then God leads man. The higher nature watches over the stumblings of the lower mortality. Two hemisphere we have already seen. One is higher and one is lower. Parardha and aparardha. So this higher nature watches over the stumblings of the lower mortality. So here lower the portion is mortality. We know light is off, here is darkness, there immortality, here mortality. There is actually super consciousness, here inconscience. So all the there is wisdom, here ignorance. We can find when this stumblings of the lower mortality happens, then higher nature just watches it. This is the tangle and contradiction out of which we have to escape into the self-unity. In bracket it has been written self-unity. We have to rise up to self-unity, to which alone is possible a clear knowledge and a faultless action. Already we know this is the contradiction. Higher nature watches over the stumblings of his lower mortality. This is the tangle and the contradiction. Two things are there. This is the tangle and the contradiction out of which we have to escape into self-unity. Escape into self-unity, not here and there. Self-unity, to which alone is possible a clear knowledge and faultless action. That is a great thing. Anyway, we must know God leads man while man is misleading himself out of many reasons. Maybe for his own errors, maybe something is imposed, maybe ignorance, maybe many reasons. So, God leads when man is misleading himself. That is the aphorism number 205. 206 we find that thou shouldst have pity on creatures, that thou shouldst have pity on the creatures. We have no on the creatures, we must be pity. Again, as well, and but not well, was well, is well, and but not well, if thou art a slave of thy pity. You be pity, you should be pity, should have pity on creatures, but it's well, but not well if thou art the slave of the pity. Well, to be pity on, to have pity on creatures, but not well if you are thou art the slave to the pity, but a slave to nothing except to God. Here in the course, be a slave nothing except to God, not even to his most luminous angels. You know, slavery, when you hear the term slavery, it is actually, so many burning in your heart. It happens slavery, you just dislike the term, you just hate it. Still then, still in the courts, if the slavery is only good if you accept the slavery only to the God, accept the slavery only to the God, and not even to his most luminous angel. Don't be to the most luminous angel. Then again, Sri Aurobindo quotes number 207. Beatitude is God's aim for humanity. That is a good term. Beatitude is God's aim for humanity. Get this supreme good for thyself first, that thou mayest distribute it entirely to the fellow beings. Beatitude, that is God's aim for humanity. Sri Aurobindo quotes that is God's aim to the humanity. But what is the factor what we have to consider? First, that thou mayst distribute it entirely to your to thy fellow beings. That beatitude, that you must distribute among your fellow beings. This beatitude is all the God's aim for a humanity. If you have, if you know, if you follow, then naturally distribute among the fellow beings. Then next one is, he who acquires for himself alone acquires ill. Allah dega to chapar phat ke dega. So just imagine what he and how much he gives. Our two hands are very much limited. For that, actually, he who acquires from himself, that is out of selfish motive, we acquire for himself, that is ill. How much can we save? He gives in four hands and we have only two, and that is divine hand and it is our human hand. So just imagine how we can acquire for us. Though they may call, he may call it heaven and virtue. I have done so much. I have so much. I am in possession. I have acquired so much riches and all. But the thing is that even though you claim it, call it heaven or virtue, that is actually very ill. So again, we can next one we are going. In my ignorance, I thought anger could be noble, and vengeance, that is grandiose. In my ignorance, when I was ignorant, I was in ignorance, I thought anger could be noble and vengeance grandiose. But actually, opposite condition. Now, when I watch the Achilles, in his epic fury, I see very fine baby in a very fine race. I am pleased and amused. So it is a great thing. When I am in my ignorance, I thought this anger is noble and vengeance grandiose. But when I got conscious, I became aware. But now, when I watch Achilles in his epic fury, just imagine Sri Aurobindo gives the example. Achilles in his epic fury, I saw the very fine baby in a very fine rage. I am pleased and amused. Just imagine what is the difference in the state of ignorance and while you are getting little bit conscious. Power is noble, Sri Aurobindo quotes, power is noble when it overtops anger. So just imagine, you have when you have power, there is some anger is coming and you are getting misutilized by your anger. So Sri Aurobindo quotes, power is noble when it overtops anger. When it overtops anger, then only power is considered as noble. Destruction is grandiose, but it loses caste when it proceeds from the vengeance. That is what. So here in the quotes, power is noble when it overtops anger. And second, destruction is grandiose when it loses caste, when it proceeds from the vengeance. Leave these things, for they belong to the lower humanity. So this power and the second thing, destruction, here in the quotes, you lose two things because they belong to the lower humanity. It is not necessary to possess at all. That is what Sri Aurobindo tries to quote. It is a very interesting thing, very symbolical and almost direct quotation from Sri Aurobindo, and direct, of course, he is directing us to be very much careful. Sri Aurobindo quotes again 211, number 211 of the aphorism. Poets make much of death and external afflictions. Poet make much of death and external affliction. But the only tragedies are the soul's failure, and the only epic man's triumphant ascent towards the Godhead. Very interesting line. We'll see again and we'll try to little bit analyze on it. But what is the difference between actually poet and what they really do. The poets make much of death and external afflictions. You normally they say, and they pay more attention. But the only tragedies I find these are not with really death and external affliction. The only tragedies are soul's failure. Really, these poets staying on the surface, they don't know what really that means. The tragedies are soul's failure, and the only epic, only tragedies are the soul's failures, and only epic man's triumphant ascent towards Godhead. That's what they don't know, they don't have the idea. So most of the time they have the they pay much importance to death and external afflictions. But thing is that when it is considered as the external, so internal something is there, that is actually soul's failures, that is our only tragedy. And the second thing, only epic man's triumphant ascent towards Godhead, that is what must be considered and must be taken over. So poets, they must be thorough, they must be aware, they must know what really is the difference in between what they have seen and what remains still unexplored for them. They don't know, unaware, ignorant. Again, the tragedies of the heart and the body. Tragedies of the heart and body are weeping of children over their little griefs and their broken toils. Which is very nice aphorism you can find. Tragedies of the hearts and the body. Tragedy of the hearts and the bodies are the weeping of children over the little griefs and the broken toys. When their toys are broken, when their griefs are so face the little grief, they weep. So this like this similarly, our tragedies and of the bodies and light, like it is compared with the children who are lamenting over the little griefs and their broken toys. So what we have to do, what really man should do, instead, because this is all these are childish, what really should be done, smile within thyself, but comfort the children, smile within thyself you smile, and comfort the children, join also if thou canst in their play. So this is the thing, but the major problem is that when these people, children, babies, they get their broken, they replaced their broken ties with new ones. So when their little griefs are satisfied, they don't weep at all. Sticks like this you have to do, smile within thyself, but comfort the children. Comfort the children, join also if thou canst in their play. So that is the one you have to join, you have to enjoy, you have to be one with them, and that is a good sign. Then number 213 we are going. There is always something abnormal and eccentric about men of genius. Very interesting observation by Sri Aurobindo. It is a fine criticism. There is always something abnormal and eccentric in the men of genius. Who felt we are men of genius? This on that observation from Sri Aurobindo on them. Something abnormal and eccentric. But and why not? For genius itself is an abnormal birth and out of man's ordinary center. So for that, they are actually with abnormal birth and out of man's ordinary center, they have been emerged outside. They are now staying in a separate hanging atmosphere. So naturally, something abnormal and eccentric with them. Them means with the men of genius. Again, we go forward. Genius is nature's first attempt to liberate the imprisoned God out of human mood. What really this is genius? Sometimes we feel this is genius, something great in him. This genius, child is genius like this. Genius here in the course is nature's first attempt to liberate the imprisoned God. Imprisoned God, to liberate the imprisoned God out of the human mood. The mood has to suffer in the process. The mood has to suffer in the process. It is astonishing that the cracks are so few and unimportant. When that liberation is there, that these cracks are so few and unimportant. Very much interesting. We'll try to quote it again. Interestingly, Sri Aurobindo quotes. genius or nature's first attempt to liberate the imprisoned god out of their human mood. The mood, human mood, that mood has to suffer in the process. When this is the liberation, in the liberation process of liberation, this genius has, this mood has to suffer. It is astonishing that the cracks are so few and unimportant. So don't stress much your importance on your these cracks, of course, on these are actually few and of course unimportant. So sometimes in nature we are testing forward, finding the next one. Nature sometimes gets into a fury with her own substance. Nature sometimes gets into fury with its own substance, but she damages the brain in order to free the inspiration. It becomes serious. She damages the brain in order to free the inspiration. For this effort, equilibrium is of the average material brain of her chief opponent. So pass over the madness of such and profit by their inspiration. So don't get much on there that and try to profit by their inspiration. Again, I will try to quote it again before you. Nature sometimes get into a fury which her own substance resistance. With her own resistance, nature sometimes get into fury with its own resistance. Then she damages the brain in order to free the inspiration. In order to free the inspiration, she actually damages the brain. For in this effort, the equilibrium of the average of the material brain in her chief opponent. It is an effort, the equilibrium of the average material brain, that is the concern, that is the point. Pass over the madness of the upstarts and profit by their inspiration. Nature try to damage you, pass over from this equilibrium, this damage, resistance, you pass over this madness and profit by their inspiration. Number 216. Who can bear Kali rushing into the system in her fierce force and burning godhead? So it is about great thing, Kali. I am Kali, the black and naked in the world. Sri Aurobindo has described in Savitri here. Who can bear Kali rushing into the system in her fierce force and burning godhead? Very difficult, very tough. Nobody can do it. Only the man whom Krishna has already possesses, he can bear. Ordinary man can't bear the fierce force and the burning godhead of Kali when she is rushing. Only those who can have it, then they are truly being already possessed by Sri Krishna. Here, hate not the oppressor, for if he is strong, thy hate increases his force of resistance. Very interesting aphorism. Hate not the oppressor. The man who really oppresses his oppressor. Hate not him. For if he is strong, if really this oppressor is strong, thy hate increases his force of resistance. Force of resistance is increased by his hate. He becomes so, more oppressor he becomes. And if he is strong, on the contrary, if he is weak, thy hate was needless. So no need, at least don't try to hate him because it is useless. If he is weak, your hate is weakless, needless. If he is strong, thy hate increases his force of resistance. So very interesting line we find here. Hatred again. Again, hatred is a sword of power. Hatred is a sword of power, but its edge is always double. We know a double-edged sword. Hate is a sword of power, no doubt of it, but it is actually its edge is always double. It is like the kritya of the ancient magicians which, if balked of its prey, return in fury to devour its sender. You know that example has been given in Napoleon also. That the same thing was written. One that term double-edged sword we have written, we have seen. continental system is like a double-edged sword. It hurt the author more than for whom it was designed. Before you are going to hurt somebody, your hands are cut. You are getting wounded. So here also, Sri Aurobindo quotes, hatred is the sword of power, but the edge is always double. It is like, giving example, Kritya. So of the ancient magicians, which if balked of his prey, returned in fury to devour its sender. It is just it will come back, so it will come back and hurt the devour its sender who has sent it. So again, 219, love God in thy opponent, love God in thy opponent, even while thou strikest him, so shall neither have hell for his portion. So what we have to do? Love God in thy opponent. Thy opponent you are going or you are fighting, so love God in thy opponent. Even while thou strikest him, when you are going to strike your opponent, so shall neither have hell for his proportion. So if you find God in your opponent while you are striking, if you can feel, if you really you feel the God, there will be no hell for you. Again, towards the end, we are finding towards this discussion, point of discussion here we are leading to. Men talk of enemies, but where are they? Sri Aurobindo questions, enemies, foes, they are our enemies, visible or invisible, but where are they? I will see the wrestler of the one petty or the other in the great arena of the universe. So don't take anybody as your enemy. Don't hate them or something. It is not at all useful, because Sri Aurobindo quotes, it is men talk of enemies, but where are they? Really, they are not. They are not existing. I only see the wrestler of one party, wrestler of one party or other in the great arena of the universe. So just imagine where really the enemies, they are in nothing like this. So don't like men talk of enemies, but Sri Aurobindo quotes, where are they? So have the love for all, don't have hate for anybody. Love God even when you are fighting with your opponents, that is the good sign. Thank you. Bande Matram.